A kitchen of the 19th century was not what we are used to. Some of the early homes had kitchens in the basement of the homes to keep the heat down there. We are used to having a kitchen that is an integral part of the homes, but back then the homes might have two kitchens, one in a separate building, often referred to as the summer kitchen, which was used to warm weather, to do the heavy preparation of items for the home larder, and to lessen the heat in the home. There was another advantage to having a separate or semi-detached kitchen, as there were no fire departments until the late 19th in the Islip town. So the kitchen with its hot fires and ovens was a very real fire hazard. If one lost the kitchen, it would be rapidly replaced if it was separate. But losing the house would be a serious blow to the home and perhaps the communities where homes were often close together. The recipes from the period also differed from modern ones, as these did not have exact temperatures, as not only were thermometers not available to the cook, but the fires in the wood burner fireplaces or stoves could not maintain steady temperatures. The coming of the coal stove was hailed as a great improvement, as it could provide a more regulated heat, but it was still not easy to maintain that temperature over a long time. Back then, cooking was even more of an art than it is today. I agree with that. As we look at some of the recipes in Sarah's notebook, you can stop the presentation and either copy down or take a screenshot of the recipes if you so desire. We are working on a transcription of the treasures of, and at some point we'll publish a booklet on the contents. Clams were a staple in the town of Islip, and so every cook had a few recipes for soups and chowder that used clams. If your family didn't include a barman, your neighbor was probably one. In an early part of this presentation, we showed you the menu for a perfect holiday meal, and the first dish consisted of raw oysters. Shellfish was also used as a garnish and an ingredient in many dishes. The recipe here is for a clam soup and is a rather simple one. So far, all the recipes for clam chowder we have found in this notebook are for New England type chowder, that is using milk or cream in the preparation. While the same menu from Godey's Lady's Book shows many meat courses, we have to keep in mind that the meats were cooked either in front of an open fire in a roaster pan or on a wood stove. By the middle of the 19th century, the more the modern coal stove was in use, the more homes, no, that was like the most, not the more. While the sample menu from Godey's Lady's Book shows many meat courses, we have to keep in mind that the meats were cooked either in front of an open fire in a roaster pan or on wood stoves. By the middle of the 19th century, the more modern coal stove was in use. In most homes, and while that gave a more even temperature for cooking, there was still little ability to regulate temperature in an oven. For that reason, meats were roasted, fried, or boiled. The difference in presentation and flavor was made by using stuffing, sauces, or marinades, as was shown in the recommended menu. Once the basic skill of preparing meat was mastered, the home cook would look to find or develop recipes for these treatments. For that reason, many of these home notebooks contain recipes for marinades, sauces, and special preparations, and not how to cook meat. There were few butchers in the rural area of Long Island at the time, though there were slaughterhouses that could butcher meat for a customer. That meant the homemaker either prepared freshly killed animals or had to use preserved meat in their recipes. Fowl or fish were more likely fresh, and that also meant that the cook also had to pluck the feathers and remove the scales before the meat could be ready for the recipe. Refrigeration had been invented, but the home refrigerator was a long way off. Farm ice home and home ice boxes were not depended on for refrigeration, and where milk and other products could be kept cool for a while, most meat from larger animals, if not, were used fresh, were preserved by smoking, picking, drying, or salting. That meant the cook had to first prepare the meat for use. To show the preparation needed for preserving meat is found in a book written by Islip town historian, the late George Weeks, entitled Some of Islip's Early History. He stated that he had in his collection a stable card, that is an advertising card for a stable run by a Captain Samuel B. Gibson of Bay Shore, that had on the reserve side a recipe for curing ham written by Dr. Mowbray. It said that to cure 4 medium-sized ham, one would use 4 quarts of fine salt, 4 pounds of brown sugar, 4 gallons of water, and 3 ounces of saltpeter. Mr. Week also noted that it was common practice in the 1890s for families having a large area of ground to raise pigs, and in the fall a date was selected for hog killing time. At times, there was much rivalry amongst the hog raising as to whom had the largest hog, and prizes would be awarded after the hogs were killed, dressed, and then weighted. The impact of the hogs on the town of Islip is a story that has been told in other presentations, but we really need to put out a special discussion on what we call the Great Hog War. Breads were another food that cooks used to impress their guests. Sarah has several bread recipes in her notebook. The one here is for a brown bread that uses molasses and was popular at the time. It requires 4 hours of steaming, which was prepared with a stove of the era. The cook would have to watch carefully and ensure that the water did not boil off as the bread was steamed. The recipe calls for a soured milk and for fresh milk. Soured milk was simply fresh milk that was left to ferment and sour by keeping it in a warm place, usually near the stove for a day. The term sweet milk was fresh milk. Remember that this was milk basically straight from the cow and not homogenized, pasteurized, or Martin low or no fat milk. Sweet milk, that is whole fresh milk, was used for making desserts, so it was an important part of the home larder. These two terms did not refer to buttermilk, which is the slightly sour milk content remaining after the butter is churned. The cook of the late 19th century had to ensure that all the ingredients were at hand and prepared before beginning the preparation of a meal. Days were spent in preparing pickled meat, vegetables, and making preserves for fruit. All this was necessary as there was no corner supermarket or even a greengrocer to run out and get something here in the rural Islip town. Sarah had several picklings and preserving recipes in her notebook. This one is for a sweet tomato pickle preparation. As you can see, it was not a simple task to preserve vegetables and fruits. These preparations were used as relishes and as side dishes, especially in the winter months when fresh vegetables and fruits were not available. And they also had dry fruits and vegetables, and these would have to be rehydrated before they could be used. In other words, meal preparation was a large part of the daily work of the homemaker, and it is no wonder that many homes hired domestic help, especially if they were taking in guests, to ensure that the meals were prepared on time. One could buy canned vegetables and fruits in the general store, but these commercially prepared food were sealed in tin cans sealed by soldering the cans closed with lid solders. They were expensive and, while available, not something that was popular or affordable for many homes. It was in desserts that the cooks could really excel. Sarah's book is full of these delicacies, as this would be the last impression that the family and guests would take away from the table. The recipes given here are one that were favorites of the age: custard. The preparation of these desserts was a label of love for the cook, as it was here that talent could be displayed. Long hours were spent by cooks improving their dessert skills. Custard appeared to be easy, but to get them right took real skill, and each cook had secrets to ensure that the custard did not burn or spoil. Today, we can buy custard in stores, but back then, It was a real treat, and all sorts of different recipes exist for the simple custard. In the sample menu we looked at earlier, the perfect dinner would end with coffee. Sarah saved a shopping list on the back of which were two directions to make coffee. This is one of those which gave the directions for preparing a cup of coffee. Even though there was versions of instant coffee on the market, these were not often used in the home. Offering your guests a cup of coffee was quite a production, which is why often a large pot of coffee was kept on the back of the stove. There were other notes on making coffee on the back of the list, but this would give you the idea of the effort needed to make a cup of coffee. Remember also that the coffee beans were frequently shipped and brought grain, and there would be a need for the grocer or the homemaker to roast them first before grinding the whole beans. As can be seen, offering coffee at the end of the meal would require a great deal of effort. Today, eggnog is something that is part of many holiday meals and parties. Believe it or not, eggnog in the mid-19th century was part of the diet fed to ill or wounded soldiers. The recipes shown here are from the 1862 edition of the Manual of Military Surgeries written by Samuel David Gross, MD, and from the Family Nurse written by Mrs. Choute, published in 1837, and this was entitled Egg Gruel. Now, I don't think that it would be something that you would want to use in a sick room, but eggnog would be a great addition to your holiday meal. So go out and buy it. Do not forget the nutmeg though. Some also add cinnamon rather than nutmeg. We also believe that many of the homes in Islip Town in the 19th century also may have added some alcohol to this medication. The perfect holiday menu also included something called hygiene and sparkling lithium water. Said to be endorsed by the highest medical authority in this country and in Europe, according to an 1890s advertisement in the North American Journal of Homeopathy. Basically, this was a mineral water that contained lithium bicarbonate and was alkaline, so it would counteract acid stomach caused by the large meal detained in the perfect holiday menu. It came as still water or sparkling, and it would appear to be really needed after a meal such as this. Some things just never change. Hope you enjoyed our look at the origins of our National Thanksgiving, a discussion of meals of the time, and an introduction to the treasure that is our Sarah's book.